my name is Cole Williams, and today's video is going to be a bit different. It's still going to be a Galaxy Defense video, but after releasing Part 2, the link to which you'll conveniently find in this video's description, I realized that I sacrificed a bit more content than I wanted to for the sake of trying to keep things short. I just didn't want to submit you guys to another half-hour long soliloquy because I understand that that's a lot to get through. All of that having been said, this isn't quite Part 3, but it's not quite Part 2 either. If I were going to be literal, I could title this video not as far along the Galaxy Defense timeline as Part 3 is going to be, but further along than Part 2 was, because while this video contains material that may have been featured in Part 2, there's also some content that leads into Part 3. But for the sake of brevity and simplicity, let's just call this one Power Rangers Galaxy Defense Part 2, Volume 2. Now, let's jump right in and start with our remaining Rangers. Thankfully, if you've been watching my videos, you already know them, which will make things easier for all of us. For instance, the next character to become a Ranger is Commander Crotho of the starship Paramount. You see, much like Anante in Part 2, Crotho is already bonded to a power star, the Star of Draco to be exact, but he hasn't used it in a long time. How long? Since Demetrius, the original Red Ranger from Part 1, the link to which you'll also conveniently find in the description, was killed by Alliance monsters while Demetrius was trying to get Zev to join the rebellion. Crotho, not knowing that the Alliance was heading for Miranoi when Demetrius went down, allowed him to beam down to the planet's surface. Because he made that decision, Crotho feels that it's his fault that Demetrius died, and as a result, he has not used the star since. That's part of the reason why he gave that speech to Caleb at the end of Part 1. But at some point during the series, the Rangers are going to spread themselves a bit too thin. After all, it is a big universe and there's only so much that a ragtag group of renegades can do against the big bad scary Empire at one time. While on the Paramount, Crotho wants to help, but is hesitant because he hasn't used the Star of Draco in such a long time. It's at this point that he has a conversation with Dove, our Blue Ranger son from Part 1. For those who don't remember, Dove was there when his father, Zev, decided to rejoin the rebellion after a period of absence. Now, Dove isn't a completely naive little kid. He has some idea of what's been going on. He could tell Crotho about how his father lived with the guilt of Demetrius' death, but things were put in perspective when the Alliance returned to Miranoi. Zev rejoined the rebellion and took Dove with him because Dove was all that Zev had left after he lost his wife Tova. If for no other reason, Zev fights to make sure that he doesn't lose anyone else. Maybe Crotho could fight for that same reason. If he can't make up for the death he holds himself responsible for, he can at least try to prevent more deaths from happening. With this newfound motivation, Crotho decides to take back up his old mantle and become Power Ranger Draco. And since we talked about Dove a minute ago, let's talk about our next Ranger, Zev's little cub, Dove. One of the things about Dove joining the team is that Zev is understandably not on board with this in any way, shape, or form. In fact, when Dove is bonded with the Star of Ursa Minor, Zev is absolutely horrified, and can you blame him? He just spent the past however many episodes trying to keep his son out of the war, and now that his son has become Power Ranger Ursa Minor, that's literally going to be impossible. Now, I'm not really going to go into how Dove bonded to the Star of Ursa Minor because I want to focus more on the aftermath, which is going to come back a little later in this video. Next, of course, is our last Ranger, Demetrius, the former Red Ranger from Part 1. Now, resurrecting dead characters has been done to death, no pun intended, and Power Rangers has not been spared from that trope, but I do have an idea to potentially freshen things up, which I'll elaborate on in just a second, because it's time to quickly go over some of the story arcs that this season would contain. Most of these are in no particular order except for the last few. Let's get to work. Now, obviously there's the main plot where the Rangers, acting as freedom fighters, fight to liberate the universe from the Alliance, which is headed by the insidious General Nebula. I feel like I haven't really properly conveyed this character over the past few videos, but I want Nebula to be a fascist, yet seemingly benevolent dictator, if you couldn't tell by the concept art. He exalts the Alliance above the individual because he claims that they want to establish order in such a chaotic universe and make it safer. And much like other fascist leaders, he has his supporters. Nebula's going to try to use this and undermine the Rangers and the rebellion at large, saying that while he feels they have similar goals, the rebels have been ineffective in achieving it. For example, he could also point out the collateral damage that the Rangers have caused, because that's another thing I've noticed. The case could be made that Megazords cause more collateral damage than monsters do, and several buildings are destroyed on a weekly basis, and for some reason it's almost never brought up, if at all. But that's just one recurring Some story arcs will include the aftermath of Dove becoming Power Ranger Ursa Minor. Zev is going to be horrified. His son is now in the exact danger that he wanted to keep him away from. Zev is going to be overprotective until they have a breakthrough. It's not going to be totally resolved in one episode, but Zev will lighten up sooner rather than later because now he has no choice. Then, at some point, I'm going to have Ballast meet with his father, who's going to be higher up in the Ushina government. And they are going to have it out over Ballast being a perceived disappointment to the family. I was thinking that rather than joining the Ushina army, which is considered to be something of a rite of passage on Ushina, as the Ushina are a warrior culture, he joined the rebellion and became a ranger. At some point, Kit and Naja are going to have an episode where Kit tries to get Naja to open up a bit emotionally. See, Kit, I mentioned in part 1, is a Zybrian, and Zybrians live in a society without secrets. Asclepians, by contrast, are a very private people. They share their innermost thoughts and deepest emotions only with their closest friends. So there will be some instances of Kit maybe trying a little bit too hard to become Naja's friend. But she'll back off, something will happen, and Naja eventually opens up to Kit. At another point, there will be an episode where the people who engineered Olo will come back and try to take him out of the war. But Olo doesn't want to leave the Rangers behind. The engineers will try to argue that he has no say in the matter as he is their creation. Olo will fight for his autonomy and convince them, standard stuff. Throughout the series, I'd like to pepper in details of the relationship between our Red Ranger, Caleb, and his mother. You see, Power Rangers has always done a pretty decent job of portraying relationships between Rangers and their fathers. Well, not always. Mothers, on the other hand, have always had it tougher. They've never really been able to play an important part in the franchise that didn't feel like it came out of nowhere. As a self-admitted mama's boy, I want to establish that Caleb's mother is the one who raised him, since his father was never in the picture. His mother instilled in him a sense of justice, an adventurous spirit, and other qualities that basically made him the man he is today. For instance, I was thinking about having flashbacks to valuable advice that Caleb's mother gave him, which Caleb will draw from in times of trouble. Now, as for our original Leo turned Phoenix, let's go over what we know so far. In order for a Power Ranger to be chosen, a Power Star must first bond with the person in question. In order for that bond to be broken, the Ranger would have to be killed. We also know that Demetrius was killed in battle when he fought the Alliance on Miranoi. So, how is it that Demetrius is suddenly back from the dead and a Power Ranger again? Well, that's just it. He isn't back from the dead, because this is not the original Demetrius. The Demetrius that has returned is a clone created by the Alliance as a sleeper agent. But he was chosen by the Star of Phoenix because at his core, he still has all of Demetrius' memories, his personality, and most importantly, the qualities and morals that made him the original Power Ranger Leo. I'm sort of taking a cue from Kat Hillard's original story arc from the 3rd season of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers with this one. An otherwise good person, through no fault of their own, becomes an unwitting puppet of the big bad, but through force of will and the power of good old-fashioned friendship, corny, I know, they break through and become a force for good. All the while, General Nebula will grow increasingly desperate. His usually calm and collected demeanor will slowly be chipped away, because he's losing control as more of the universe is being liberated from Alliance control. He'll start doing more blatantly evil things, and he'll slowly start losing supporters. What he does next will be revealed in part 3. Hold tight, guys, we're almost there. For real this time. The next video I post will be part 3, I promise. Thank you all so much for your patience, and I would just like to say that if you like this video, hit it with a thumbs up. If you hate this video, hit it with a thumbs down. Leave a comment down below. Tell your friends to watch my videos, if they want. is hit that subscribe button, ring that bell to be notified when I drop a new video, and don't forget to follow me on social media if you want to. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, I bid you a good day.